Time to get emotional because it's obviously been a huge week, a huge show with a lot of ground covered, but no better place to finish it than with one of the defining TV shows of our time airing its final ever episode. And joining me one last time to discuss Succession is my partner in the incredible Fuck Brother bandwagon, the one, the only Tom Pot. Tom, final time discussing Succession. I believe you've asked for time to speak, as you all know. So if nobody would oppose, Tom would like to speak now.
Thanks. I mean, look, I think up the top, it's a tumultuous time, and I just thought someone should say a few words. So, a few things here. Hello, I am here as a fellow human to acknowledge that Succession is finished. Succession was a show. Also, Succession aired on HBO for nearly 5 years. When a show ends, it is sad. All shows will end one day. And in this case, it is Succession that has done so. Succession ran for 4 seasons, but no more. Now it's over. Succession's creator is Jesse Armstrong. He made many shows, and he is sad. Thank you. That's just all I want to say.
Beautiful.
Did someone have to say it?
That was amazing. I just didn't know how. I think we could just finish it there because I don't think it's going to get better. But let's talk about it. I mean, we've come this far to turn back. So, guys, as we're going to do, we are going to be talking in a spoiler-filled manner. If you haven't, for whatever reason, watched Succession to this point, and you're like, you know what, I might jump in. This is the one thing you better not listen to because it's the last episode. We're going to tell you how it ends. Okay, so make sure you watch the episode first, and don't come crying to us if we spoil it for you, because that is what we're warning. We're going to be talking everything Succession, filling all things spoilers. We're going to get to the discussion shortly, but first, what we're going to do to discuss it, to throw ourselves back into the mindset, as we always do, is I'm going to give you our alt recap for the final ever episode of Succession with open eyes. And it opens as Kendall and Shiv are in a battle prep mode as Stewie is getting cold feet at the last minute, which is just a classic Stewie move. While the media is reporting that Shiv pulls the strings on Matsson. Roman shows up in Caroline's Caribbean air clear retreat, which is like a rich, vacuous edition of Noel's house party, where I suppose Peter Munyon is Mr. Blobby, I guess. So Kendall and Shiv make their way there using Game of Thrones final season time travel rules, trying to nab his vote. Whilst he's gone, Matsson sounds Tom out on if he'd be down for him and Shiv fucking in exchange for being CEO. The C in CEO, little known fact, stands for cook, by the way, guys, because Tom says yes. Telegram, telephone, telegreg with Google Translate. The news that Shiv is out is leaked within seconds of being spoken in Swedish, and the siblings instead rally by Kendall after anointing him with a feast cocktail featuring Shiv's spit and Peter's cheese as licked by Roman. The next day in Logan's home, they are all playing billionaire Bagsy to claim his stuff when it all comes out. The siblings storm out while Tom and Greg get in a scrap in the toilet where Greg actually fought back for once. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, the score kicks in and we have ourselves some fucking stakes in the finale. It's board meeting time and Kendall is insufferable already, putting up his feet on Logan's desk and then doing the full Logan impression by physically abusing Roman. Shiv can't stomach it and she lives up to her name in the boardroom, voting Matsson after a full-on temper tantrum from Kendall. Matsson wins. Tom is CEO. Greg continues to be the world's highest paid assistant. Shiv accepts her role as dutiful wife. Roman is going for martinis and Kendall needs Colin to watch to make sure he doesn't jump off a bridge as the show ends with him staring into the water that has haunted him for the entire series. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Succession. Tom, emotional times. As we know, the last episode of one of our favorite shows ever. But the question, as always, when it comes to landing, it's a cliche question, but it's the one we all think, so we may as well just address it. Did they, force quote, stick the landing? That's what we always have to say with the finale. Or did they ruin it all? Was this a Sopranos or was this a Game of Thrones? Your thoughts?
Oh, it's very interesting that you use those examples as well, because I love the Sopranos ending and other people are like, fuck that. And other people kind of I feel like a few people have felt like that with Succession. And honestly, speaking about sticking the landing, it's so damn appropriate because I think like last week or 2 weeks ago, it was the 4th anniversary of Game of Thrones kind of fumbling the ball at the end line. And it's like the 25th anniversary of Seinfeld having an ending where people were like, oh, I don't know about that one. This is one for me. I think it stuck the landing. And I think it's something that in retrospect, it's sort of like, oh yeah, it all makes perfect sense that this would be how it ends. It's the sort of thing where like sometimes you kind of have to stand back from it. I do think like as an episode in general, was it the strongest episode? Maybe not. But I think it was kind of necessary because it really was an episode that kind of lulled you into a certain false sense of security. Like a lot of people that I've seen complaining about the finale are like, oh, I wanted this person out of the company, or oh, I thought it was going to be a happy ending. And I'm like, they don't really deserve a happy ending. And you know, why it's like it's the same thing with wrestling as well. I know, like where it's like I wanted this person to win, and then they don't win, and it's like boo, bad choice. And Succession kind of gets that. Like I think like when a certain show gets popular enough, and it happened with Game of Thrones as well, where it was like this person better win or else it's awful. I think it stuck the landing. I think it really was something that has been in the offing for a long time. I think like there's, you know, I have certain foreshadowing elements that I'm going to talk about that feel like this was always going to be the end game. I feel like you could maybe look back at the season and say it was a little bit filler at times in retrospect. Like there's some kind of red herrings maybe, or things that just didn't really go anywhere. But as an ending, I thought it totally worked. I feel like the characters stayed true to themselves, even though it was maybe devastating. It's what the ending needed to be, I think.
The tragedies, and of course that's kind of the idea with tragedies as well. For me, I agree. I think they gave us a great Succession season finale. Was it genre defining? Like for me, when you talk about season finales, The Sopranos is the best ever. I also put Better Call Saul up there. I put that ahead of even like Breaking Bad and the likes. I think in terms of like just providing an amazing last episode that stays with you forever. It's so rare, but I put those two up there as probably my two favorites of all time. I don't think they got to that level, but I think they landed a very difficult plane successfully. They gave us kind of everything we've come to expect from a Succession finale. There's ensemble moments. There's Carolina's always has to be there, and I'm glad she got like kind of a key moment in this. They paid off the storylines that we wanted paid off. They gave us loads of takeaways, and kind of even last week we're like, I don't know how they're gonna do this. And to me, it would have felt really unnatural for Succession to go into anything like a time jump kind of finale at the end. I know we're kind of saying, well, we kind of needed to see how it all plays out, but they didn't need it. They managed to get everything done the next day, and we have the answers we need. But also with a finale, you do want to go away asking questions. You don't want to know absolutely everything. You do want to go, I wonder what's going to happen with them, like Shiv and Tom. I wonder how is that going to work? Like, is that going to be the way it is? And we can kind of speculate for life, unless you're like a J.K. Rowling type author and you're just going to be like, I'm going to answer all your questions on Twitter and ruin all your speculation. But like this kind of gave us the questions that we had, but also answered everything satisfactorily. I've watched it twice now. The second time I liked it the first time, but I really, really, really liked it the second time. And I'm like, yeah, you did it. It was such a tough job to do. And I think for the nature of the show and for being respectful of the characters and making decisions that felt true to life while also increasing the stakes as high as the show does, as the show can, because again, it kind of has a bit of a sitcom comedy vibe where every episode it all just resets anyway. But for escalating it to the point that we needed to care about where it ended up and for everything to make sense and feel like a finale, it did. But again, our expectations are skewed by what a finale should be. You know what I mean? And again, they just gave us an episode of Succession, and that's all we want. And it was a really good one, and everything in hindsight made sense. Also, they had a conclusion that was right there the entire time in front of us, I feel, and none of us guessed. We're all going, Greg, this is Greg's time to shine, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's been about Tom the entire season, clearly. But they kept it away from us, which again is just amazing writing when the answer's right in front of you and just none of us can see it. I didn't see one person picking Tom standing tall at the end of it last week, and there he is, and it all makes sense, and we were happy with it. And that's kind of where I want to go, because what are your thoughts on the new Waystar CEO? Is this a satisfactory? Because again, the entire series, he's never really been into it until about 20-30 minutes into this episode. He was never really in the CEO mix. So it's a swing. But like I said, there were some pieces that were already there. So what are your thoughts on it being Tom and him, quote unquote, winning as much as it's possible to win in this world where you're probably actually winning if you get out of it? What do you think about Tom?
I think Tom in some ways was always kind of, it seems like it's hard to say this now, but he always kind of felt like an obvious choice in a weird way. He's someone who always sort of just hung around and seemingly, despite doing very little, or doing anything of substance, kind of being pushed around and being a yes man, got to where he needed to be. And it's funny because the whole time I was like, oh, well, Greg's a yes man. Matsson seems to like him, but Matsson was just happy to have Tom because Tom's a more public face. I mean, to be fair, we were talking last week, like they picked Greg. Greg was like, who's that guy? Oh, you know, the guy who just babbled in front of Congress. Oh, yeah, him. He'll do it.
Yeah, yeah.
But Tom, I mean, it's funny because in retrospect, I've seen a few people kind of point out that there's some interesting things that might have shown that Tom was going to be the CEO. So there's a name theory. I was on about Shiv backstabbing, and I was right, I guess, in that regard.
Yeah.
But so Wamsgans, I mean, which is a weirdly pathetic name. Don't get me wrong, Tom, excellent name. Wamsgans, but apparently the name came from, and some people are speculating, this is not confirmed, but there's a baseball player called Bill Wamsgans, who's basically not known for anything, except that in the World Series he had an unassisted triple play, which basically means he took out 3 opponents continuously, which is kind of what he did here. Some people are saying that was foreshadowing. There's another interesting one, and this is something that I heard a lot of times, and I'm glad I never remembered in the moment because it would ruin so many so many shows and movies. There's apparently a clause with Apple that you can't have the villain have an iPhone. And apparently, if you go through the series or the most recent episodes, I think has an Android, and maybe Shiv has an Android, but most of the rest have iPhones. So people are like, "Aha! See, he was the bad guy the whole time." Which also, it's kind of like, I guess he's the bad guy, but really, they're all bad guys, really. But yeah, I think it just seems kind of fitting. And I do love the kind of flipping of the power dynamic we get with him and Shiv at the end. It's kind of sad. You kind of feel for Shiv in a way. Also, can we just say, by the way, how appropriate was the scorpion gift in retrospect? Like, wow, perfect gifts. And it's even funnier because like that whole kind of Scorpion the Frog story we told about staying true to their nature. There's apparently an episode where Roman goes, "Oh, scorpion party," and it's like, "Oh yeah, they're all scorpions. They're all just going to live up to their nature, and that's what's going to fuck them." But yeah, I feel like Tom is the perfect ineffectual CEO to be a puppet. So it's very weak congratulations for Tom, I suppose. But you know, I think he's a kind of a deplorable character because he is one of the characters that like he's like the rest are kind of tied by blood. You know, they can kind of just walk away. Even Greg, to a certain degree, is kind of an outsider, but has that family connection. Tom is there because he wants to be, because he craves power, because he wants that. He wants the status and everything else. And like when his marriage with Shiv was falling apart, he was still like, "I'm going to hang in there with Logan." And I also should say there's a lot of people pointing out in retrospect now there's a poster for season 3, and again it highlights the ending of the finale of season 3 again, which this kind of had a lot of parallels with the finale of season 3, I feel. Where on the poster there's like a dividing line, and it's like Logan, Greg, and Tom on one side, and the siblings on another side, and it's like, well, there you go, there it is. But yeah, I guess Tom was an appropriate choice if you want an absolute puppet. So well done, Tom.
It follows the like, and again, when shows tend to end with a, again, quote unquote, winner, it follows the kind of formula that we've gotten used to from Prestige TV. Like in Lost, it's like Hurley's going to inherit the island, and I'm like, I did not see that coming. I did not see him as the responsible one. And then it's like Bran is the person in the Iron Throne. It's like Tom is now the CEO. So again, it follows, but again, I think it nailed the landing a lot better than those two. You did call it earlier into the series, Shiv the Shiv, did her thing, lived up to her name, was a scorpion at the end, and did the about turn at the end. What were your thoughts? Because that seemed to come very out of nowhere. Again, in character, so we can't say that it wasn't the character, but it was, they had the numbers, they had the win, and then Shiv just fucked it all at the last minute. What were your thoughts on this? And bringing up as well, you also called that, you know, the kid that Kendall killed was going to get brought up. So you're right on both counts, but how did you feel they executed it?
I feel like this episode, the whole, like, I actually think in my notes, I was like, when is the other shoe going to drop? It's like the whole time we're just like, this is too saccharine. There was no way this is going to be. The siblings are all getting on. It's too happy an ending. I was like, I knew something was going to happen. I also should say this is something that if you're kind of a history buff, which I am, I studied history as well. Yeah, that's right. I studied loads of things. So at one point they call, I think, Roman Cicero, which was the enemy of the second triumvirate of Rome. The triumvirate is like a 3-person power system that was in Rome for a long time. The first triumvirate actually falls apart because of a death, which again, could possibly say that's what happened here. Maybe again that's a stretch, but that's what's fun about overanalyzing these shows. You stretch and make glorious claims and look very intelligent. So I think like it was just like when you look at like even Roman had that one where it's like, it's not me, even though you're like, it should never have been you.
Mm.
And it was just that moment where Kendall was just a little too smug and satisfied. Like, I think if he had just not sat in the big chair and put his feet up, probably could have gotten away with it. But they just cut to the faces of Shiv, and I was like, oh, okay, that's it. That's it. And it was, oh God, it was a glorious implosion, was it? Wasn't it? Where you're less like, okay, well, Shiv might vote against, but then it was like, no, it's not just that. It's also, you killed someone. No, I didn't. And then he screams, I am the eldest boy. And you're like, oh God. Which also, not the eldest boy. We had Connor in like the end of season 3 said, I am the eldest son as well. You're like, oh God. It was like just everything happened at once. And then the cherry on top was when Roman's like, hey, by the way, your kids aren't real kids. And then he was literally opening old wounds on Roman's face. I was like, oh, mwah. And then it gets even funnier when you're just like, the board meeting is just watching all this happen and hearing all the screaming and shouting, and you're just like, oh, it was so damn satisfying. I love how no one in the show fights normally, by the way. That's just such a great white collar thing where like we had that fight between Greg and Tom the which was like, oh, I'll slap you. Well, I'll slap you back. Oh, I guess we're done.
Duel.
Let's not wrinkle our suits. Like, and then just like, I'm just going to squeeze your face, I guess.
It's like, did you ever see the film Vacation? Do you know when like the older kid who gets bullied fights back and he just starts like rubbing the younger kid's face? Like, what are you doing? That's weird. It just freaks him out more than anything.
It kind of summed up this kind of privilege, Oh, it was so weird. It kind of just made it even funnier than it should have been. But like, it was like going to happen the whole episode. Yeah. It happened in like the last moments where it was like the last 10 minutes. It was like, oh, it's all gone wrong, as it kind of should have. And again, a lot of people are kind of like almost annoyed in some ways that happened. I loved it. It was like, oh, these people finally getting what they deserve.
Yeah.
And basically, they all just showed who they really were. I mean, Kendall, well, say what you want about him. He's kind of a wreck a lot of the time, but he generally can kind of keep it together. Here, he had the equivalent of a toddler tantrum.
Yeah.
Why he's kind of the way he is in the episode where he's like, Dad promised it to me when I was 7 years old, and I'm like, man, he definitely, he should have said that, because that's his whole like, that's like that explains him. It feels like every now and then we get like, oh, tick that box, that's why that person is that way. And it was glorious. I loved every minute of it. I was just kind of watching it with like a kind of giddy like grin, just like, it's all happening. I loved
that scene was incredible, and it was incredibly acted by all involved, and I loved some of the tragic twists and beats of, like, again, just Roman concluding at the end, just sitting on the table like a child going, we're bullshit, and just like kind of that's it. And again, like even watching it was almost a Shakespearean kind of throwback there, and you kind of, if you watch the inside the episode, they break down specifically what influences were there, and like I loved everything about that. The one thing that I didn't feel that they took is, and this is the one minor, if I'm to nitpick anything from the finale, I don't think Shiv's decision made sense in hindsight. When you watch it back a second time, you can see the look of sheer disgust and disdain she has for Kendall when he puts his feet up on the table. And it does make sense on a rewatch, but I don't feel that they brought us enough on the journey or planted enough seeds. The great twists, and Tom is an example of a great twist, where in hindsight, we're instantly like, Tom, oh yeah, no, look, it's there. None of us picked it, but it made sense to us all when it played out. I don't feel like they took us on that journey enough with Shiv, and particularly the bit where she brought up killing the kid. Like, I just feel like they just threw that in. They're like, oh shit, oh the kid, oh we have to get that in. And then she's just like, why can't I be CEO? You killed the kid. Yeah. And then it's like, well, that's never, like, you never even had one discussion with Rowan about it, or it's not really relevant to this. It's a reason, fair enough, but like I've never seen you morally wrestle with this beforehand. So why is it all that matters now? And again, like, but having said that, the scene itself is spectacular. I felt all actors just dialed it up to 11 in a way that they absolutely had to. I felt Shiv's, uncertainty about it, and it would be something where it's like she's literally cutting her nose off the spider face at this stage. There's no way to win. There's two bad options, and she's just taking the one that she can, I guess, sleep with best that night. But Roman is just like acceptance, and Kendall is just pure denial, rage, anger, all the emotions. Like literally the every stage of loss was coming out of Kendall at once there. So really well acted, and I can't hate it. But again, I just feel like they could have done a slightly better job of bringing us on that journey, because when it happened in the moment, the first time, I'm like, why? Why is this happening? What's the reasons? What's the motivation for this? I don't get it. It is dramatic and everyone is dialing it up, so I don't mind, but I didn't fully understand it until I watched it a second time. But that was maybe the weakest moment. But again, that's a tiny little nitpick for me more than anything. What did you think the best moment of the finale was? What's the high point?
But I mean, aside from the kind of big explosion scene that kind of was all payoff, I mean, I loved, like, in a weird way, I really liked all the scenes with the kind of siblings together, which was really good. I mean, first of all, I wrote a note at the time because I watched this like really early before I'd like looked into any of the discourse, obviously, or heard anything about it. And I said, like, they had that whole meal fit for a king thing, which I loved because I've done that. Like, it'd be like, oh, what are we going to put in? Put in a bit of vinegar. Oh, he's definitely going to get sick with vinegar. Yeah. lads. But like, I also, like I said, like, I wrote down, like, you just absolutely know that the cast and crew were like, we're going to make the most disgusting shit because fucking you absolutely know that he's going to drink it with his method acting bullshit. This is for putting up with you, you prick. And then sure enough, he's like, yes, I had to drink it. I was compelled to drink it. And you're like, oh, you're such a muppet. You know they put that in there just to fuck with you. Like, I liked and they were kind of sweet. One scene I really liked because it was kind of quite sad was like there was the whole kind of breaking up the estate and just seeing Logan on the TV, seeing a real different side to him that the kids kind of seemed like they got to see but didn't necessarily remember or didn't see it very often, and decided none of us really got to see Logan. And I thought there was something quite sad about that where Connor was the only sibling there, and it kind of feels like even though he didn't have a great relationship with his father, he's kind of the only one that felt like it was a somewhat normal relationship, because he wasn't interested in business. He wasn't interested in taking the kind of throne, as it were. And it feels like the other kids were kind of kept at an arm's distance because of that. And really, it kind of feels like Logan had a business family instead of a real family. And it was quite sad, but it was kind of nice to see another character of Logan. I feel like they're still kind of developing the Logan character, even though he's died. With between this and the revelation about his sister in the last episode. And I don't know. Those are kind of the scenes that really stuck out to me. The kind of meal fit for a king scene and the kind of videotape of Logan now that he's gone, which, yeah, I feel like it kind of showed both character very, very well. Kind of explained that maybe not necessarily that he wasn't all bad, but there was another side that we just didn't really get to see very often, and that's exactly how the kids felt. So I think it was very appropriate that was how the viewer felt. And the for King scene was just fun, you know, which is a rarity in the show, generally speaking.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had both of them down in my own kind of notes, and I loved as well just the fact that, like you say, Connor's relationship with him was just slightly different. Connor could rib him in a way. Connor could, like, I love that I'm a little teapot. Fuck off. I love the way. And that's something that I loved as well, because we got to see Connor do impressions of Logan, but we also got to see the kids do impressions of Kindle. You know what I mean? Yes, murder me, guys. You're like not supposed to do that. That'd be like a bad thing to do. They nailed it. And again, that's probably just thrown in to just have a bit of fun with him, like, and just to kind of rip the piss out of Jeremy Strong. For me, my favorite scene in the time where I'm like, this is a fucking finale, was the tone shift in this after Tom told Shiv, and just the instant, like, when Tom just came out and was like, I'm the US CEO, like, Shiv's just turned and just speeding through the houses, like, get the fuck out of here. And the way we just shifted right into the boardroom scene, and we're like, oh shit, it's going down. I love the score from Nicholas Britell, who, like, low-key an MVP of all this. Again, he just found 1,001 ways to play the same song in different ways, but it worked every single time. And it was perfect, like, because the score kind of took a really dark, menacing turn, and it was really ominous, and we sped towards the boardroom, and you have Tom's fight with Greg. You had Greg fighting back. The moment, like, where Greg just slapped him, and then you turn the camera towards him, and he's just got this look of defiance on his face. He's like, he's not a fucking kid anymore. Holy shit, go on, Greg. And then just like
I actually gasped. I was like, he hit him back, you know.
Yeah, and just like what I loved about it was just the increased physicality of it all. Just showed the pressure that everyone's facing. They're in this pressure cooker, and they can't now, like, communicate just through words alone. They can't express themselves. They have to, like, be physical. They have to fight. They have to like hurt each other to actually just get out what they're feeling, the tension and the anxiety that they're going through. And it really kind of played home. Like even then you move into the boardroom, Kendall starts squeezing, like cutting open Roman's like stitches, like the scar reopening it. And Roman as well, like kind of just playing ball, going back to that inner child and just kind of being like, yeah, no, I'll vote for you again. And it was really disarming to see Roman, who's like, fuck you all the time to everyone that he encounters, just when he gets physically abused, go back to that child. It was really powerful that it was Kendall that did it. And Kendall was forever the guy, and we've seen it in the show, who protected him from that. And now Kendall is the Logan character. He's the aggressor. He's bullying Roman physically, and Roman is responding as he would have responded to Logan in a way that we've never seen Roman before. But obviously Kendall, as the big brother, knew it was there, and it just came across as so scummy that for a guy a couple episodes ago in the election special, we're like, he will never be redeemed for me, and all of a sudden I'm like, you stop bullying him. And it's just, this show could just turn you like that. But amazing stuff, loads of little things. And again, the more I talk about it, the more I'm kind of loving this finale. It was great. But we left the kids at the end. We have Jeremy Strong on the Succession podcast this week says that he thinks Kendall committed suicide. They actually ran a take where he went to jump over the bridge and Colin had to stop him. But obviously they didn't go with that. And I'm glad they didn't. It would have weakened the show if they left it ambiguous for us to imagine. Jesse Armstrong feels kind of differently. He feels it was just the defining moment of Kendall's life, and he always had to live with it. But obviously he continued to live. We're left kind of wondering, is Shiv going to be the dutiful housewife, whereas Roman is kind of a bit ambiguous, drinking martinis and kind of smiling and accepting that he's bullshit, but shit, he just made a few bill. So I guess he'll get over it. What do you think is next for the kids? Where's your head canon go after this? Because we're probably not gonna see.
I mean, and I think that's kind of an interesting thing about this. In some ways, like, we had that quote before about Sarah Snook reading it and saying like she didn't realize it was the finale. I kind of can see that. In some ways, it doesn't necessarily feel like an ending. And I've heard that quote going around during the week of like, this is just where the story loses interest in them. And I'm like, yeah, that feels appropriate. Yeah. I feel like, I would say that Roman probably is just going kind of before a lot of the series, where it's just like kind of the alcoholic playboy with a load of money. And he seems kind of happy to be kind of free of it all, to be honest, especially after the last few weeks. He's had a rough go of it. Sarah, or not Sarah Snook, what the fuck, I'm Shiv, Jesus Christ. Shiv is like, I mean, she kind of became her mother, it's like she's like now just following the CEO. And in fact, I think she kind of finds a weird degree of comfort in that, kind of being in the shadow of this CEO character, kind of like, which is what her relationship with her dad was like for so long, It was really sad that, I mean, by the way, just the hand, like Tom didn't even look over, just put the hand out. And it was the saddest hand, Sarah's hand shake. I don't know what you want to call it, hand squeeze I've ever seen. There was just nothing. It was just like, like someone putting their hands out for the communion bread. Like,
it really was, yeah.
But, like, I think she was just gone, she's going to be a mother. Hopefully she's going to be a better mother than her own mother. She just felt totally defeated and tragic. It seems like she's kind of severed her relationship with her siblings to a certain degree. Maybe not Roman, but Kendall, I feel. And I go, the Kendall suicide thing is something that I think everyone's going to debate. And I think that's probably something that Kendall himself is going to debate for the rest of his life. Whether he's actually successful seems kind of irrelevant. I mean, that's straight away. I was like, as soon as he got that out of her, I was like, oh, fuck. He's going up to the top floor. And I saw someone saying online, like, that thought they were going to like take the photo and he'd be in the background photoing. I was like, that would be such a weird moment in the show. But yeah, and again, water is the big kind of symbol for Kendall at all times. Again, you could look at it from a few ways. I know I heard that as well, that he was talking about throwing himself over and taking. I'm glad they didn't do that. I think the kind of ambiguity works, and we were just talking about The Sopranos kind of ending, and a lot of people are saying like, oh, we wanted to see Tony get murdered or whatever the hook. And it works without that, So I feel like it was maybe him having to realize kind of what's next and sort of eventually going to have to come to some sort of acceptance. I'd love, again, we have no way of knowing, because he does kind of seem somewhat passionate about his kids at times. So I'd like it if he just kind of went away, but I guess we're never going to find that out. But it feels like he basically just lost everything. He's out of moves. And he feels like there's some quote from this episode where he says like I'm a cog designed for just one machine or something like along those lines, and it's like, yeah, like everyone else kind of has something else, or never really kind of feel like they fully intended that they were really CEO. They had fallback plans. He's the only one where you're like, this is all I ever wanted, and now it's gone. And I think he's going to grapple with that for the rest of his life. I don't really see him coming back. Maybe he'll form another business, but like for him, I think the whole question is that he probably is going to contemplate suicide for the rest of his existence, which is pretty sad. But you know, he's not really a character that's deserving of sympathy in many ways. So you know, you kind of get what you deserve, I suppose, for a lot of these characters.
Shout out, by the way, to the guy who I love this. This is such a nice little touch. The rando who just got into the lift at the same time as Kendall. And then it's like, I love it. Like they were never gonna, obviously, they would have been totally out of tone, but like that just happens. That's just life, especially in an office blog. Something devastating can happen, and then you can just get into the lift. You're having this existential crisis, and then someone could just be like, "Oh, hey there." Yeah. So, yeah, pretty good weather we're getting out there. That happened to me a couple of weeks ago.
It would have been even worse if he was just like top floor. You were like, "Oh, sure, running, buddy."
I like that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I got in a lift with people, and I was like, we're on like a staff day out thing. So like, I'm real like kind of hyper, and I got in a lift with people. I'm like, "Oh, hey, I'll come down with you. How are you?" Blah 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 blah. I'm talking, and I kind of realized halfway down the lift it's really somber. And then later on, like, I was like, "Hey, do you know the person you didn't know in that lift?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like they just got fired like seconds before. I'm like, "Oh my god." So I was that guy getting into the lift. I related hard. We're speaking about where the characters ended up, and kind of the show. Jesse Armstrong has said it's the end of the show, but they haven't closed the door on the possibility of spin-offs. What are some of the spin-offs you'd like to see come away from this?
It's sort of it's kind of really tough when it comes to spin-off. Easy, it's kind of so easy to be like, I'd like to see more of this character, but then it almost kind of becomes the same again. You know what I mean? Like if I'd love to see more of Greg, obviously, but then I'm just seeing Greg in the same company, and Tom has to be there, and it's like, it's kind of the same thing in a way. I think if there's a few characters, one thing I'd love to see actually is a prequel. I'd love to see like the forming of Waystar and kind of the coming together of the OG, no pun intended, kind of board members, you know, like the Jerrys and the Franks and the Carols. Like I'd love to kind of see that.
Frank in the 70s just like absolutely laying into women on like the boardroom table.
I love it. Yeah. I just want like the formation of Frank and Carol, that magical moment, you know.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't mind, like, you know, when they were like in this episode where they were like one last rodeo. And I was like, yeah, one last rodeo is the next show, and it's either going to be them in that business or also making like a business in the Bahamas, and they get fall afoul of some criminal mob boss or something. But amazing. I think, you know, like character, like again Shiv, it feels like we kind of in there, like Logan, or not Logan, Kendall. It's like, you know, I don't really know, is there going to be a satisfying story there? Roman is probably the one that would be the most interesting if we were to go like with a really direct spin-off as the siblings go. Like, what does he do next? Does he eventually actually try his hand at business? Does he eventually face repercussions for his actions? And I heard a lot of people say actually that one of the reasons Tom like is like Jerry staying around is because she kind of like, if Roman ever did try something, it's like, well, yeah, you know, she has a lot of dirt on you, so you stay away. As far as other spin-offs go, Matsson would be an interesting one, but I also feel like if it was going to be Matsson, it would be more like Matsson. It's like I want him removed from the Waystar equation, because then we're just seeing, you know, the same thing. It would have to be Waystar way in the background.
Yeah.
And aside from that, the Pierce family, kind of see it from like the other side, because we never really got what happened there with the whole acquisition, and maybe that wouldn't happen now that they've acquired by Gojo. Like, so I don't know, actually it'd be interesting to see that story of like them now not being acquired, because they seemingly desperately kind of really needed that acquisition. So I was like, now what do they do? But it's kind of hard to do a spin-off, because I feel like it would be so easy to kind of retread the ground they've already done. But I don't know, it would be a very interesting one. I think like it would have to be something much smaller if they did it, like a character that was so kind of minor, because otherwise we're just seeing media moguls again. But I think there is ways of doing that in SRA. And again, I wonder if there is something we could see down the road, maybe revisiting the World of Succession. I don't know. I know HBO would eagerly eat it up. But I don't know. Jesse Armstrong seems like an interesting dude as far as not really sure what he's going to do or commit to projects. Because like, I actually like Succession. Something people don't know is like Succession started off as a film script. Like it was a script about Rupert Murdoch. And the only reason it didn't happen is because like basically no one wanted to make it, because they were like, well, if we make this, Rupert Murdoch owns this, and this, so he's not going to let us make it. So I don't know. Maybe you could do a film about some of these characters, but I don't know. It would be a very interesting one. What are your own thoughts on it?
I have a few that I thought of that I'd like to see. I want to see Breakfast in Dubrovnik, Connor Roy travel show. And just literally just give me anything with Connor, anything Connor related. There you go. I'd watch him read the phone book. I want to see Greg team up with, I don't know if anyone knows Sonam Obsessian from the Conan O'Brien podcast. If you listen to that, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. I want to have them do a world's worst assistants podcast. Or the last one, this is my favorite, and I will like, seriously, I will help fund this myself if I can. I want to see a show called Bullshit Creamy Profits, where it's Roman Roy just saying fuck it and investing in Peter Munion's and Jonathan's business plan. We don't know what it is. They haven't given us anything. We just know there's creamy profits in there. And I want to see Roman just like, look, I've nothing else to be doing. Like, let's just see where this goes. And they have to form a madcap oddball team. What was your quote of this episode? Do you have any that in particular that stood out?
There was a few. I would say I probably have less quotes in this episode than a few of the others, because I think they were kind of being so nice to each other. I did like, just a brief aside, he said like he played really like a big fiddle, like a pregnant cello. Then we have or when the mom called the heel of the bread knobbies, and she goes, oh, it's a bag of frozen knobbies, which I just loved. Actually, the only other one aside from that was the mom had another quote I'll get to in a sec, but when he says like, what else did he say when no one was around? That he was the Zodiac killer, that he did Tupac. It was great. And then my favorite one of the whole episode, and I think this is going to be one for a lot of people, was when the mother, just out of nowhere, apropos of nothing, just said, there's something about eyes, they just kind of revolt me. And then she just goes, eyes? Like human eyes? Which is amazing. And then she goes, we all have, I don't like all those blobs of jelly rolling around in your head. Face eggs. God, I was like thinking of Alien in my head. I'm like, face eggs. What a weird woman, and what a weird thing to say. I want a weird thing to be like, let's put that in the finale. There you go. Just some weird random diatribe about eyes. Like, fair enough. Yeah, okay.
Incredible. Caroline, always the icon. I had a couple of them in there as well. For me, there was a couple extras I liked. Two kind of really small things, but things that made me laugh a lot. Roman, when he's like kind of still broken and trying to explain what happened, and like everyone's kind of like, Roman's very delicate, leave him alone. And he just turns around like a child at one stage. He's like, I was in a very violent fight, which I won, by the way, but still. And it's just like, he has to say that he won. But for me, what I loved was, and this is just, this person had one like kind of moment where they were talking, one speaking role in this, and they stole the show from me. Carolina, I love this. It's like, we have a chance to change the culture, the backstabbing, and maybe part of that change is getting rid of Hugo. And immediately stabs him in the back in the name of getting rid of backstabbing.
Like, no, yeah,
love it. I loved it. It was just instant hypocrisy. Get rid of the backstabbing and Hugo. I hate that guy. Phenomenal, Carolina.
Speaking of like backstabbing and that sort of stuff, another quote I loved was Frank and Carr, where as soon as Tom walks into thinking, I'm thinking we should have slit his throat in the cradle, and then he just goes, well, it goes without saying. It's amazing. Incredible. Like, I want that's why I just want more of them. You know, they're like the two old fuckers from the Muppets. Just let them react to stuff. That's what I want.
Literally, the new what's it, Marley and Staldorf or whatever. I forget their names.
Sattler and Waldorf.
There you go, Marley and Staldorf. Not even close. Okay, so we spoke a couple of times about like the Emmy being essentially a game of pass the parcel for this. So kind of at the end of it now, who was your MVP of season 4 acting wise? Like, who do you think kind of, if the Emmy had to go to someone here, who would it be going to? And I think, to be fair, it is going to someone from here. It is going to several people. They're going to clean up on this.
Yeah, it's one thing I always hate about the Emmys is it's like they're always very careful about who they submit to what category, you know. I feel like because I think it's going to be Kieran Culkin. I think like he's been excellent. He's shown a lot of range this season. He's had so many kind of big scenes. And I know like Jeremy Strong is kind of the one who often gets more praise than him, but I think like the kind of method acting of it all has thrown a few people off as well.
Yeah.
But I think like he's someone who has just shown that like he's more like likable, even though he's a horrible character. And I think like, the Emmys like kind of going for someone who can portray a kind of a bad guy, and also just show a bit of range. I can picture his show reel already in my head when they're doing the Emmys, where I can't necessarily do that with like Jeremy Strong. Like I feel like he's always a consistently good actor, but I feel like this season that he really kind of showed it. It feels like he was kind of passive in a bit of a daze in a lot of the episodes this season. I mean, like I feel like they could give one to Brian Cox, and I think they'd be very sneaky about how they kind of actually submit him. But again, I feel like he's been as good here as he has other seasons. I don't. Sarah Snook. I mean, Succession is going to kind of win a lot of awards. Realistically, she's kind of the only female character in the show that I think they're really going to put forward. And aside from that, it's like Tom and Greg. I just don't think they're going to get the play that the siblings got. I could see them maybe getting a nomination, but I feel like it's. I think it's going to be Kieran Culkin's to lose. Jeremy Strong is going to be like right on his heels, just because they love giving like awards to actors in the final season of a show that's been a kind of an awards darling. So it'll be interesting come award season, because I think it's actually got a lot of competition this year in general. But I think like Kieran Culkin will be my pick as going away with him.
Yeah, I think Kieran Culkin for me is definitely up there again. Just had the most to do. Every episode, it felt like he was just adding something else and just kind of had the biggest, yeah, like I said, the biggest range and the biggest arc to go on. I think Matthew Macfadyen is underrated and was brilliant. There's so many of the season's iconic moments I think of Matthew Macfadyen as a part of. The argument with Shiv obviously being the high point, incredibly acted and kind of showing just a different range. He had to kind of show he had to like play Tom in such a specific way and standing up to Shiv, and then obviously that arc to where he just immediately looked comfortable in power by the end of it. And like even just in that one scene in the car with Shiv at the end, a very quick scene, but just was able to show the power dynamic had completely changed with one simple hand gesture. And then also, like, even when you think of Logan dying, you can't detach Tom's soothing kind of Midwestern polite tone from that. That is very much a part of that scene, and it helped it. He was soothing us as much as the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it was just thinking like the various different ways. Also under the radar, and this is just someone I love anyway, Alan Ruck for Connor had an amazing season, because there's like, you know, you think of what he's been through as well, and it's gone under the radar. Got married on the same day, like Logan's death was called Connor's wedding, the episode. And it was like, you know, there was that whole, like, I don't need love, kind of the self-acceptance that he had, but he also had some hilarious moments in the middle. America, you fucked it. Like, you know what I mean? There's so many Connor moments, as there always is. So again, he's up there. But for me, yeah, I agree. Kieran Culkin. We got to talk about, because it's obligatory, like saying did they stick the landing? It's obligatory to kind of have the conversation around where Succession fits in the pantheon of kind of great TV shows. And Prestige TV we'll look at specifically, because I kind of split the best ones into two tiers. In tier one, you have, for me, The Sopranos, The Wire, Better Call Saul, and Mad Men. They're kind of ring fenced as tier one, like perfect shows that ticked all boxes. And then for me, secondary, I have slightly flawed in different ways, but they're personal favorites that I absolutely loved and meant a lot to me, like Breaking Bad, Lost, Game of Thrones, 6 Feet Under. And when I think of Succession, I kind of have it. I've tried to do this, and again, you only really know a couple of years out. Like, this will constantly change. And again, with rewatches, the list will constantly like minorly adjust while I'll still being there or thereabouts. But for me, I have it towards kind of the back end of like the tier one shows. on an episode by episode basis, I thought Succession was as good as any of them, if not better, like at its peaks. But I feel like it never really got in deep with the subject matter in the way the others did. I feel like, and especially when you look at Better Call Saul, that got meticulously in to every episode and every thought the character had. When you look at The Sopranos, that got into every facet of life in the mafia through different characters, even questions we weren't asking. Even the main question, what if a mobster boss went to therapy? No one was asking that question, and it became all we thought about for nearly a decade of our lives. They got into the subjects like The Wire, got into like, right, season 4 is like The Wire, but with kids. Season 5 is the life will continue on and on and on, and it's never going to stop no matter how many inroads the cops make. Season 2 is The Wire but with white guys, and it's just various different like kind of themes, and they kind of answered every different thing. Similar with Mad Men, they went through every scenario, whereas I think Succession left a lot on the table, which I respect as an artistic decision, but when you leave stuff on the table, you're also leaving yourself behind. Like there's the US election episode where like this could be, you could do a whole season on this, and I feel the other shows would have done a whole season on it. There's like kind of the FBI investigation, there's the congressional scandal. These are all things that like toys that Succession picked up and said, look, wouldn't this be fun? And then they got distracted by another toy. It's literally like the congressional scandal episode happened, and then it's like, ooh, a shiny yacht. And then it's like they just forgot about Congress and their investigation. We never got a payoff for that. We never really got a payoff for the FBI investigation. It's just like, oh yeah, that's gone. And there's something to be said about like, that's the way power works in America. As wrestling fans, we've seen it with Vince McMahon, where it's like, oh, they've got him now, and then it's like, no, Vince is back. No, it's fine. Don't ask any questions. He's just powerful. So it's just, that's just not a thing anymore. So there's something true to life about that, and I respect that. But again, it's just, it never got under the hood. It never got its fingernails dirty. It never really kind of got into it in the way the other shows did. But like I said, on an episode by episode basis, take Succession's best episode and put it against the best episode of any other TV show ever, and it's probably just as good. It's an amazing, amazing show, and one of the best shows ever, probably top 5 for me. What about yourself? What do you think in terms of like the overall rankings of great TV shows?
I think, yeah, I think we have very similar rankings, for one. That's again, it's hard to tell like in the moment. All right. I think it's something that, especially when it has like a short run, like 4 seasons, like every other show we named there, that ran a lot longer than that. And with 4 seasons, it is still hard to tell. I feel like when a show like goes for a long time, it's kind of ingrained itself into the public consciousness a bit more. People have rewatched it more, and then by the time, if it sticks to that, and it's like, yeah, it's up there with the best. This is one that I think you're going to have to kind of revisit a few years down the road. And I kind of do agree with what you're saying as well, which is something I was thinking about. Like, I feel like it didn't always kind of dig too deep into that world. Like, some of the great moments were when it did, like when it digged into like kind of the interconnection between politics and the media. And it feels like we were just getting that. And then it was like, and we're wrapping it up. And, you know, I also totally respect it, because I do feel like this is a show that has a very finite kind of lifetime, life force, lifetime, life cycle. I don't know, all sort of life words. Built into its title, it's about succession. Someone has to succeed. There's, you know, like they introduced that he was kind of on the way out in the first season. I would say this season, in some ways, you could possibly say it's spun its wheels at times, and could kind of have been kind of, I think, if we went into the next season with what just happened, it would probably be the same thing, and it would get a bit more ludicrous, and it would dilute what came before it. So yeah, I totally respect it. I would also kind of say, yeah, that it's in between tier 2 and tier 1 for me as well, and pretty much everything you named in tier 1 is in my tier 1. And of course, I think you forgot it's also going to be in our tier 1, Entourage, a show we absolutely both love. I mean, yeah. It's right up there. Like, I can't believe you forgot. Like,
yeah, you know, weird. Like I've never watched Entourage. I don't like it. I don't think it's for me. I feel like you're misremembering a different I didn't know how to say it, and I feel like I don't want to say this, like, well, but if you're gonna call it one of my favorite shows ever, like I've never actually seen.
No, that's not, can't do that now, because like we spoke about Entourage like in depth. You were like just nodding your head. You were way into it. Like,
I don't feel like that's me. I don't. That mightn't be me that you're remembering. I didn't know how to say it. You just kept bringing it up, and like you didn't really give me a chance to.
I brought it up like, man, I looked like such a dick. I brought it up every fucking week, man.
Yeah,
and you were like, yeah.
But you never actually asked me if we're like, you just kind of assume. I didn't want to correct you, but like, I'm not putting it as one of my favorite shows ever. Like, sorry.
What is it in the conversation at least?
I've never seen an episode. I don't even know.
You've never
Entourage.
seen an episode of Entourage.
You
How have
kept
you never
saying
seen
like
it?
turtle in it.
You-
Is there a turtle in Entourage? Is he a main character? Like the animal?
We recall fondly the time when Vinny Chase was going to do the movie and then he suddenly wasn't going to do the movie.
No, none of those words mean anything to me. I'm sorry.
He was going to be Aquaman, Queens Boulevard, Harry Gold.
Just words. Just words. No, just words. I don't understand any of that.
Well, I mean, at least if we do another podcast, we know what it's going to be on Entourage, right? You rewatch Entourage, right? Can I get your word now on video?
If the writer strike goes on for years and we run out of content forever,
okay, I really
I'm
don't
going to give it a hard
one,
maybe. Okay,
deal? I can live with that. Okay, maybe works. Okay,
there you go. Out of the deal.
And the movie, not just the show, because it's also an amazing film.
Okay, all right, fine. Yeah, maybe hard maybe on Entourage in the future if we run out of all content to watch ever. Okay, perfect, grand. Okay, I feel like it's
clear off the rest of tier one, because Entourage is going to be right up there on top of it, looking down at Don Draper and the lads. Ooh.
Amazing stuff. Look, it's been a pleasure talking with you for the past few weeks. We're not done yet because next week we're going to come back and have another retrospective view. We have to redo the rankings because Ted Lasso is going to be in there as we round off season 3 with either the season or series finale. Interestingly enough, to kind of add to your theory, by the way, just before we wrap up, I went away thinking about your theory that it wasn't actually the end. It was more the end for Ted. If you go onto Apple TV and you look at the preview, it says the season finale, not the series. So there's some credence there. So yeah, interesting times indeed. We will wrap up Lasso season 3 and maybe Ted Lasso altogether, depending on how it ends next week. But Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk Succession with you. In the meantime, if you haven't already, subscribe to Pop Cup Pod on YouTube. Loads of Entourage content up there if that's what you're looking for, I'm sure. So check it out in the meantime. Tom, always a pleasure. Chat next week. But until next week, fuck off.